This video is brought to you by True Tales of Buried Treasure, the largest collection of old treasure magazines in the West. On our website, you can search for individual treasure stories by region, or buy our original magazines themselves. To pay us a visit, please click on the link in the description. Enjoy. In early June of 1852, a large wagon train gathered near Mountain Meadows, Utah, preparing for a long and arduous journey to San Bernardino, California. The group was composed mostly of Mormon settlers who hoped to build new lives in the fertile lands and mild climate of Southern California. They envisioned a place to farm, raise families, and establish a church. Aware of the dangers along the trail, especially from hostile Native American tribes, several non-Mormon, Gentile wagons were invited to join the train, adding strength in numbers. The leaders chose to follow an old Spanish route that meandered south into Nevada before turning west near the Colorado River and continuing into California. Once all 59 wagons had made their final preparations, the journey officially began. For several weeks, the oxen and mule-drawn wagons made slow but steady progress, eventually entering the arid expanses of Nevada. Finding water quickly became a pressing concern. Streams had dried up, springs were empty, and water had to be rationed for days at a time. Spirits lifted when they reached Armagosa Springs, about 75 miles northwest of the larger spring cluster, near what is now Las Vegas. The group paused here for 2 days, but before they could refill all of their water barrels, the spring ran dry. Hoping to fully rest and replenish at Las Vegas Springs, the party instead faced a controversial decision. The leaders proposed a shortcut, cutting through a low pass in the Armagosa Range to reconnect with the main trail in California. Though this route could save around 60 miles and several days of travel, it crossed an area known for lacking water. Tensions rose quickly, and arguments about the judgment of the leaders turned heated. Eventually, the group split. 50 wagons under the leadership of a man named Smith stuck to the original plan and headed toward Las Vegas Springs. The remaining 9 wagons opted for the shortcut, entering the unforgiving expanse of Death Valley, a place notorious for its brutal heat, sparse water, and hostile terrain. After a day of slow travel across the barren desert, the smaller group made camp near Furnace Creek, where they found a meager stream of water. But disagreements flared again, and by morning, 7 wagons veered northwest in search of water, while the final 2 continued southwest, following an old Indian path along the Panamint foothills. Meanwhile, 3 men from Smith's larger group, Cadwallader, Farley, and Town, grew weary of the constant disputes within the caravan. Believing they could make better progress on foot, they bought some supplies, filled their canteens, and set off alone across the dry plains, heading west. 2 days later, dehydrated and demoralized, the trio regretted their decision. The heat was blistering, their water nearly gone, and the sun relentless. Just as their situation became dire, they stumbled upon Daylight Springs, a small oasis that offered limited shade and water. After resting for 2 days, they pressed onward, eventually reaching the Panamint Range and entering Follies Pass with hopes of descending into Panamint Valley on the far side. As they made their way through the narrow pass, they began searching for a suitable spot to make camp for the night. While searching for a place to spend the night, Town spotted a rocky overhang large enough to shelter the 3 of them and provide some welcome shade. As Town and Farley rested beneath the outcrop, Cadwallader volunteered to scout the area and try to hunt rabbits for their supper. Roughly 75 yards from camp, something unusual caught Cadwallader's eye: a gleaming horizontal band of rock embedded in the canyon wall. Upon closer inspection, he was stunned to find a 2-foot-thick ledge of pink quartz, shimmering in the afternoon light and densely laced with silver. Overcome with excitement, he rushed back to fetch his companions. The 3 men, each with prior mining experience, stood in awe of the glittering discovery. They knew silver when they saw it, and Town declared it the richest ore of its kind he had ever encountered. With excitement mounting, they broke off several large chunks of the silver-laced quartz and packed them away. They made a pact. Once they reached San Bernardino, they would organize an expedition to return and mine the silver in Follies Pass. The following morning, the trio resumed their journey, forging across the punishing desert. On the third day after leaving the pass, they arrived at Last Chance Spring and were surprised to find the two wagons that had previously split from the main wagon train. Cadwallader, Farley, and Town decided to remain there for a few days to rest with the small party. One evening, seated around a campfire, they struck up a conversation with a traveler named King. He and his family, among the few Gentiles in the original group, were headed to Santa Clara to join relatives. Curious, Cadwallader pulled a piece of silver-bearing quartz from his pocket and showed it to King, who was visibly impressed and said it was the richest ore he had ever seen. When the three men shared their plan to return to Folly's Pass and mine the ledge, King offered a word of caution. At the time, public interest and financial investment was focused on gold, which was more valuable than silver. Their venture might struggle to gain support. Weeks later, the small party finally arrived in San Bernardino. True to their word, Cadwallader, Farley, and Town immediately sought investors for a return expedition to the Panamint Range. But King's warning proved accurate. Gold fever dominated the day and silver drew little interest. Disheartened, the three friends went their separate ways. Cadwallader invested in mining ventures in Mexico, while Farley and Town settled in Los Angeles. A year and a half later, Farley and Town finally succeeded in persuading a group of investors in Los Angeles to fund a silver mining expedition. Initially skeptical, the investors changed their minds after seeing the ore samples from Folly's Pass. An assay confirmed the quartz was exceptionally rich in silver, convincing them that the venture could yield substantial profits. A few weeks later, Farley led a small, well-equipped group out of Los Angeles, bound for the Panamints. But tragedy struck almost immediately. On their first night at camp, a heated argument broke out between Farley and one of the investors. In a sudden burst of violence, the man drew his weapon and shot Farley through the heart, killing him instantly. Without their guide, the group was unable to locate the Silver Ledge. Left with no other option, they abandoned the mission and returned to Los Angeles. The legendary ledge at Folly's Pass had claimed its first victim. After returning to Los Angeles, the investors approached Town with grim news of Farley's death and asked him to lead a second expedition to rediscover the Silver Ledge. At first, Town hesitated, but after some persuasion, he agreed to guide the party back into the Panamints. On the third day of the second expedition, tragedy struck again. Town fell seriously ill from food poisoning and died before they could reach Folly's Pass. With both of their original guides now dead, the disheartened investors considered abandoning the venture altogether. Then someone proposed they try to track down the last surviving member of the original trio, Cadwallader. Several weeks later, Cadwallader was located and brought back to Los Angeles. He agreed to lead a third expedition, though only in exchange for payment. Since moving to Mexico, Cadwallader had left behind many of his Mormon beliefs and had become a heavy drinker. During the journey, he drank constantly and could barely stay on his horse. Just a day's ride from Folly's Pass, Cadwallader died, apparently from alcohol poisoning. 3 expeditions, 3 deaths. Convinced the Silver Ledge was cursed, the investors returned to Los Angeles and swore off any future attempts to find it. But the legend refused to die. In 1857, an adventurer named Bailey launched yet another expedition. A seasoned explorer, trapper, and Indian fighter, Bailey claimed to know the terrain of Death Valley and the Panamint Range intimately. He boldly told investors he could find the ledge with ease. After raising $75,000, he vanished. Later, grisly rumors emerged that his body had been found deep within Death Valley, scalped, mutilated, and left beside a remote trail. Roughly a year later, a prospector named Buell took up the quest. After hearing tales of the cursed Silver Ledge in Los Angeles, he traveled to Santa Clara to speak with King, the same man who had once seen the ore sample by a campfire years earlier. Convinced he could retrace the steps of Cadwallader, Farley, and Town, Buell set off alone with 2 burros loaded with supplies, determined to reach Folly's Pass. A year later, a group of hunters found Buell on the road to Austin, Nevada, nearly 80 miles northeast of the Panamint Range. He was in poor condition, but claimed he had discovered the legendary Silver Ledge. Before dying, He showed them several small but astonishingly rich samples of silver ore. News of the cursed silver ledge of the Mormons spread quickly across California. Many were drawn by the promise of wealth, but time and again, new expeditions ended in failure, misfortune, or death. To this day, the silver vein is said to lie hidden somewhere within the unforgiving landscape of Follies Pass, still glinting under the desert sun. Though the legend continues to lure a few bold souls, most avoid the area altogether. Even those who scoff at superstition often stop short, haunted by whispers of a curse that refuses to die. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to read the original article or purchase the magazine from which it was taken, please check out our website, truetalesofburiedtreasure.com.